You are listening to the Hire Fast podcast. On today's episode, I'll be talking about engagement, what it means, why it's important, and how to use what I call power versus force to get more productivity, more profitability, and I'm also going to share some great stories. All right, let's rock and roll.
The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Hire Fast podcast, a podcast aimed at educating you on hiring the right person for the right job and keeping them. Are you sick of spending precious time and energy hiring and training people just to have them turn around and quit? Then join Alan and his guests on Hire Fast as they teach you how to skillfully motivate and attract rockstar talent. Now here is your host, Alan Daviduk.
All right, I want to thank you for listening to the Hire Fast podcast. I'm Alan Daviduk. This podcast is your source for all things attracting, hiring, recruiting, staffing, developing, retaining, and going for an avatar that I call rockstars. So, who's this podcast for? It's for all my restaurant people out there that are grinding every day, owners, multi-unit managers, operators, any retail business owners, teams, operators, anybody that has hourly employees, this is the podcast for you. If you're struggling to retain and protect your core people, your long-term people, and you want to shield them from being stolen or poached, this is the podcast for you. And if you have poor performing employees, which I know we all do, and you want to either find a way to eliminate them or get them to level up, then this is the podcast for you. So I created this system, the S.M.A.R.T System, to fix my problems. But now I want to bring it to you, right? It's my sole purpose. It's what I'm called to do, is to help restaurant and business owners solve these problems so they can win. And it's the way that I learned how to fight back against the employees who were destroying my business, and then they would just move on, right? They'd move on to somebody else's business. And I got tired of this, and I had to put it to an end. So my company is an education, training, and software company that is really people-driven. It's purpose-driven. And it's leading to getting us all more profit. And it's my plan. I'm really out to change the world, right? And do it by one hire at a time, one person at a time, and one company at a time. I want to direct corporations and teach their teams to direct the employees that they have and educate them to level up and transform their behaviors and teach them the skills that they need so their problems don't become our problems by making them active thinkers and problem solvers. And this way, business owners can make more sales and more profit, and they in turn now can help more people. So the S.M.A.R.T System is an acronym. It stands for Skillfully, Motivate, and Attract Rockstar Talent. And the reason I came up with this acronym was because it was my roadmap that I used to break out of this prison I was in at the time in my family's business. And it's how I stopped myself from dying slowly every single day because of all the pressure I was facing by not having the right employees. And it's how I achieved and discovered what I call the secret sauce, which is two things. It's employee engagement and employee retention. So I want to just recap the last episode because right now we're in the acronym for S.M.A.R.T, Skillfully Motivate, Attract Rockstar Talent. We're in part 2, Motivate, which is really focusing on the culture and the environment within the four walls of your restaurant and to deliver on this promise that we make to our teams and the new candidates coming in. So if we don't have the four walls of our restaurants operating optimally, then we're going to bring people in and they're going to spit right out the back door. So we need to stop that. And how we do it is we change the culture and environment and we invest in our people. So that's one of the things we talked about last week. So the next thing we talked about is the way that we do this, right? We do this by creating a foundation, cornerstones of a building. We use the example called CARE, right? 4 cornerstones of the building to hold it up. And that building is our culture and environment inside our restaurant. One piece comes out, the building topples over. And the 4 cornerstones are connection, affirmation, responsibility, and environment. We're going to start to unpack the framework on the next episode. And today, though, we're going to talk about a few different things. So just want to finish the recap. So care is the activator of the S.M.A.R.T system. Without it, it really makes it difficult. We have to focus on our culture. So one of the other things we talked about last week was our biggest asset in our business is our people, right? And if we're not getting the massive results that we want, then it's because we're not investing in our people. And we identified that we were the problem, but we were also the possibility and the solution. And the way that we do this is maintenance, right? Just like equipment. We have to invest in our number one asset, just like we invest in our equipment to keep it running optimally. So how do we get people to care? This was a question we ended with last week. And what I said is, well, we have to show up as leaders, right? We have to change. So there's a massive problem in this country right now that a majority of American workers are disengaged, right? Now, let's just break that down a little bit. So 45% of the people in our restaurants or businesses are disengaged, or they're not engaged, I should say. But 26% of them are actively disengaged. So that's worse than just not being engaged. People that are not engaged, they actually function, right? They actually go through the day and they do some of the things they're supposed to do. But actively disengaged people are the one causing all the chaos and all of the hazards in our restaurant. They're the ones that are stealing. They're making all the mistakes and the waste, and all of this stuff comes. All of our depleted energy is coming from those actively disengaged people. So if someone doesn't care, then you'll see it in their attitude, right? You'll see it in all of their actions. I'm sorry, if someone cares, then you'll see it in their attitude and the action. If they don't care, then you see all the consequences, right? All the things that we just listed out and all the things we talked about. You know, they're rude, they waste stuff, you know, they're super disengaged, they steal, they give products away to their friends. There's no urgency, they don't rush for things. And, you know, when I read this off, in my mind, I'm thinking of Fred Flintstone, right? Remember in the Fred Flintstone cartoon, the whistle blows and he just slides down the tail. He just literally stops everything he's doing because it's time to go home, and he just slides down the tail and leaves. Well, that's what happens with our employees. So why, as a leader, should you care? Why should you care about this employee engagement? So the problem is if you don't care about it, the financial stakes are crazy, right? They're tremendous. The money that you will lose in productivity and in profitability. So as a leader, it's our responsibility, right? If we don't put people in a place where they will fully invest in themselves, then we're in trouble. So we can't build a high-performance team without engagement. So what is engagement? It's how much someone cares, right? About their work, about their coworkers. And it's how they take care of the customers and how they feel about the organization. I have this girl, Kelly, that works for me, and she says this all the time. She literally walks around all morning and says, if we don't take care of these customers, the boss can't pay the bills, right? The boss can't do this. Now, she doesn't even realize how true of a statement that is, right? If the employees aren't actively engaged, none of it works, right? And that's where all the stress comes from. So this girl preaches it all the time. So think about this, right? Think about you've got this big warehouse, right? And it's filled with all these high-performance race cars, Ferraris, Porsches, I don't know, whatever, all these fancy cars, right? I'm a truck guy, so I don't have a lot of fancy cars. But just imagine you get this big warehouse of all these fancy cars, right? You got all this horsepower and all this potential just sitting there, right? But you got no gas. So all these big things are basically big giant paperweights, right? Fancy paperweights. Without gas, they don't do shit. They can't go anywhere, right? That's what engagement is. So that's the way I want you to look at that. Engagement is the gas that makes the sports car go. So last week I had mentioned this book that I had read that really kind of aligned my thinking. It was called Win the Heart by a guy named Mark Miller. And in the book, he tells this incredible story, right? So Mark Miller was the COO for Chick-fil-A. So, you know, I really learned a lot for this guy. He became a mentor of mine. And he tells this story in the book about, he you know, when he worked for Chick-fil-A, he hired this whole team of people they were students at Stanford University. And what he basically wanted is he wanted this deep dive, and he paid tens of thousands of dollars for them to go out and scour every article, every piece of content that was written on high performance teams, right? How to get people to do what they were supposed to do. And, just he wanted to put together the best team ever. And if you've ever been to a Chick-fil-A, you can see that he succeeded in it. But this was back before he figured it all out. So the leader of the team, I don't know who it was at Stanford, calls him and says, hey, we got everything together. We're ready to present to you and your team. So they show up at Stanford University. They said, we're going to need 5 hours to go over all the data with you. So they were prepared to be there all day. So about an hour in, he's listening to them talk, and they got 49,000 slides, and they're doing all this stuff, right? And he's like getting irritated. He's like, I just paid you tens of thousands of dollars, and all you're talking about is engagement, employee engagement. I don't even know what that means, right? And the guy that was doing the presentation said, sir, just so you know, this presentation's 5 hours long, and for 4.5 hours, we're going to talk about engagement. That is it, right? It's all about engagement. So engagement isn't an employee problem, right? It's a leader problem. So that's a direct quote from Mark Miller out of the book. It's on us to get the engagement. So we're accountable to the engagement of our staff. And look what happened. Last week I had told a story about this girl, Kat, that worked for me. And because I didn't pay attention, because I put her on autopilot, she got disengaged and quit. And that was my fault. At first I was irritated, right? At first I was blaming her, and I was blaming 90 other things. But when I really, really unpacked it, it was me. I was the problem. I took my foot off the gas, right? I stopped paying attention to her. And in turn, she got disengaged and quit. So what I want to talk about is how we show up as a leader, right? And how we, in our companies and in our organization, how we put engagement out there, how we increase engagement. So the word that comes to my mind is capacity, right? We want to increase the capacity, right? The amount that people will produce. So how do we do that? And we do it I want to compare two different ways of how people operate within their business. So we're going to talk about power, coming from a place of power, and then coming from a place of force, right? So force is like I force you to do something, right? It's like compulsion. I'm jamming it down your throat. I'm a hammer, and I'm running around looking for nails, right? So I'm kind of a dictator, right? I want to force an outcome. I want something to happen, right? So I'm going to drill you. I'm going to micromanage you. I'm going to beat you over the head with this hammer until you get the things done that I need you to do. And I may use different tactics like manipulation or intimidation. I may even lie to you, right? I may not, and lies come different ways. I may not just outright lie to you, but I may omit something, hey, listen, Sally, I'll give you, don't worry about this week, but I'll give you 28 more hours next week, whatever it is, and then I don't do it next week, right? So basically what I'm trying to do is use motivation as a tactic to get the things done that I want. Now let's take a look at the other side, right? That's force. So I'm forcing an outcome. Let's look at the other side, power. So power is more like I persuade you, right? It's persuasion, the act of persuading someone to do something. Now, instead of being a dictator, I'm more of a director, right? I'm going to guide you to an action. I'm going to help you understand it. I want to instill certainty in you, and I use truth and inspiration. I'm very transparent, right? So I'm going to create a story real quick here. So let's say I send you to do something, and I say, hey, Timmy, listen, I got this pen. I need you to go put it on my desk. So he runs in my office, and he throws the pen on my desk, and he leaves, right? So now the problem is I need someone to go get that pen, right? And I send Sally, and Sally can't find the pen. So that's one, kind of option of the story, right? Imagine if I flipped it around and I said, hey, Timmy, listen, I need you to go in the office. I need you to put this pen on the white tray. There's a specific white tray on my desk. You got to put the pen in the tray because Sally has to go find that pen later and she needs it for something, but she's colorblind. And if you don't put it on the white tray, she won't be able to see the pen on the desk, right? So think about the difference in that statement, right? Where now when Timmy goes in the office, instead of just throwing the pen on the desk, he understands why he has to put the pen in a certain place and why it has to happen, right? That there's a funnel down effect. So to get those results, right, I have to be transparent, right? I have to involve him and really make them understand the why we do what we do, right? And this is one of the ways we increase engagement in people in our businesses. So when we force people to do things, what happens is we're trying to get results, right? We're trying to get an outcome. So when we force them, though, we get this short-term gain, right? So we push, we get a result. But then what happens is if we break people or we disengage people, then we end up having like a long-term pain, right? That's where they quit and we have to replace them. And we lose that trust. They kind of resent us, right? But if we flip it the other way and we try to get a result through power, right, we get long-term gains, right? We get people to stay and they want to be part of the company. And then we're able to offset short-term pains, right? So if we get a call out, people will help you, right? So we're basically flipping the entire script where we get people to trust us, want to be there, and we're a catalyst for those changes just by flipping the way we engage and interact with people. So what happens when you really go to force, it's this kind of comparison between motivation and inspiration, right? When you force people, you're trying to get some quick motivation. And in my mind, motivation, it's kind of the reason why you do things, right? It's really has a short-term like expiration date on it. So imagine, you take 5-hour energy or, you take a shot of espresso, right? You get some quick energy and then in 5 hours you're like down in the dumps, right? Or you wake up in the morning, you watch a YouTube video and you're like, yeah, I want to go like run through the freaking wall and kill people, right? And then by noon, it's like everything sucks and, life is horrible again, right? So you go high and then you come low. Where if you flip it around and you go more inspiration away from motivation, then people have this feeling, this internal feeling that they want to do something. It activates them to do things. I have these girls that they get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, they get in to open the restaurant, they're consistent. That is not something that just happens with people, right? Do you do that? How hard is it for you to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning consistently for 5 years, right? There is something inside of them that makes them do that, right? And it's the difference, right? They understand why they have to be there. They want to take care of the customers. They want to do a great job, right? This is what we're after. So let's really quickly tie it all together. So the secret sauce that I talked about was engagement and retention. So they go together. So to get that high level of care for the employees, as a leader, we have to focus on the cornerstones of care, right? Connection, affirmation, responsibility, and environment, right? This is the most critical part of the S.M.A.R.T system if you want to build this culture and you want to get people to, quote unquote, care, right? When you say that, oh, I want to get people to care, I'm giving you the secret sauce. I'm breaking it down for you. We're not just throwing something up against and hitting the side of a barn. I'm literally giving you the steps and the framework of how to change the culture and environment in your restaurant. So the level of care that you have in your restaurant, getting people to care, is directly correlated to the engagement that you produce. So remember, the secret sauce is to get people to do better work, to have more energy, enthusiasm, to contribute. You have to follow care, connection, affirmation, responsibility, and environment. And if you miss this, man, I'm telling you right now, you miss this, it's freaking game over. This is why you have the problems you have right now. So next week, what we're going to do is we're literally now that I've given you all of that, is the segue. I've primed the pump to go over the framework of care and to really break down and get you to understand each component, each pillar of care: connection, affirmation, responsibility, and environment. I'm going to give you examples and what it means. And then we're going to talk about this kick-ass product that we created called the Rockstar Journey. So if you're stuck and you want to talk more about how to change the culture and environment in your business, I'm going to give you my info in a few seconds. So I've built these systems and processes to get you to speed up this process in as little as 30 days. So you can see a metamorphosis in your business. I want you to love what you do again, man. I want your team to be engaged, but not just do I want your team engaged, I want you engaged. And remember why you're doing all this in the first place. So thank you so much for listening today. Remember that that Hire Fast is a major component of the S.M.A.R.T system, and it's the system that I developed to solve my biggest problems. And remember that the leaders with the best employees win every time, and that's what we're after. So if you haven't already clicked subscribe or follow below, please do so we can keep you up to date with how to hire fast. You can visit me at getsmartsystem.com. You can email me at alan@getsmartsystem.com. You can call me at 1-888-3SMART5. Please do. Ciao for now, guys. I'll see you next week.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.